Good morning, everyone. My name is Carlin Lee.
I'm Hannah Spencer.
And I'm Camille Jernigan.
So first we're going to start off with Dr. Tracy's food story. So she grew up in Maine. She was one of 6 children, and she grew up with 8 people around the kitchen table. This is something I could easily relate to, as I also come from a big family, and we have 8 people around the table at all times. She was part of a working class family, so her meals were never that extravagant, but they did have steak on occasion, so we knew it was a big deal. Her mom cooked every meal and usually ate last and typically had a small plate. Again, there were so many of them, so she made herself the last plate to make sure all of her children and her husband were fed. And the actual event of eating is what stuck out to her. She loved the fact that they got to sit around the table and communicate and debrief about their days.
So to continue her food story, she loves connecting with others and sharing meals with other people. This is something that she really enjoys. She enjoys trying other food types. She loves Indian food, especially spicy stuff. And she is the cook out of her siblings. Every time she visits home in Maine, she cooks way more than is needed so everybody can take freezer bags home and enjoy it whenever they want.
And this was her after our second meeting, and this was her recipe book that we got to choose from when we're deciding about our meal.
So these are some of the things that we made with Dr. Tracy. The first thing is artichoke dip. There are a bunch of different ingredients that we didn't really know of, or none of us had really tried before, that went into this dip. So I think we were kind of cautious before trying it, but then after we tried it, it was amazing. And then we made her homemade pasta sauce, which a lot of the faculty members and all of her family love. So she recommended to make this. And then we had noodles and garlic bread along with that. And then the apple pie dip was what we had for dessert, and that was also really good. And she allowed us to all take home leftovers of it, which was nice. So reasons behind the specific food that she picked: the artichoke and apple pie dip, she wanted us to be able to experience the Dip-a-Palooza, which is something that she contributes to once a year around Halloween, and it's right over near campus. And then we picked the 2 dips we thought fit best with our course because we didn't want them to all not bounce off each other. And then the pasta sauce is something that she always made, and it's something that she spent years perfecting, and she loves sharing with her family and friends. And everyone just kind of raves about her pasta sauce because it's very different, and she makes it differently from a lot of typical people.
So I have a video over here of her mashing in the ground turkey with the sauteed onions and garlic. With this, she taught me a new technique of mixing together all the spices and then mushing together the ground meat with it before we threw it into the pan. And then that's also our plated meal. For me, this meal felt like a glimpse of home because, again, I come from a big family. We all got to sit around the table and eat, so it was really nice to be able to bond with the professor on a more personal level while also bonding with my classmates and being able to sit there and just talk and have a fun conversation. I was able to deepen my relationships with both my classmates and Dr. Tracy, who I've had before, so it was nice to get to know her on a deeper level than just professor-student. It also really opened my eyes to seeing how people view food differently, along with not just this, but how we watch other people's personal food stories in class. I was able to see what food means to them and how it affects their lives, which I really appreciated. So I brought my visuals, and so the top picture is from our very first meeting. It was really awkward, so being able to look back on that and then moving to our dinner where we were just laughing, talking about a few stories that don't really get brought up in the classroom, it was really nice. But we also were able to learn about how her food story impacts what we were making. And so we were able to make decisions based off her story and our stories to find a meal that worked best for all of us. Also have Cam with a big empty bowl prepping to make the apple pie dip and mix all the spices together. And then there's also me washing the pasta sauce dish, which was way bigger than the sink, and it was brutally awful to have to try and wash that. And I also learned that with the pasta sauce, you can't get a sweet red wine, because she talked about it for 45 minutes, how it tasted so different, and we figured out it's because I bought a sweet wine instead of a dry wine.
So for me, this meal was a very significant experience. I have never done anything quite like this. I think one of my biggest fears is opening up somebody's fridge. I don't like other people's food. I don't know why, it's just a big fear of mine. But this allowed me to make memorable connections with not only professor, like Carlin said, it's a professor-student relationship, so it allowed us to make different connections, and also with my fellow classmates who I did not know well before this project. And this just exemplifies the power that food has to bring people together in a simple way like this. And the picture is us at our final meeting. That was very fun, and we ended up talking about boyfriends and all types of personal subjects, so that was awesome. And then the video is Dr. Tracy sauteing some onions, and here are my visuals. I went with the apple pie dip. The picture of Hannah and I trying not to literally cut our fingers off peeling the apples because we had no clue how to do it. And then the apple pie dip, the final product when it came out of the oven, it was probably the best thing I had ever experienced.
Definitely. She also really had to take the knife away from Hannah because she knew it was going to hurt herself.
So to me, it felt like a piece of home because every single time I go home, one of my favorite meals that my mom makes is spaghetti, but she typically makes it a little bit different. She makes it on the stove and then we'll put it into the crock pot throughout the day and let it heat up and cook, and then we eat it later that night for dinner. So it was kind of like a little piece of home for me and reminded me of my mom and baking that with her. And then it was also interesting to see her cookbook and her recipes because for me, my mom never writes recipes down at all. Like, she just throws stuff in the pot and then ends up with what she got. So for me, that was really interesting, and I liked being able to take pictures of her recipes because they were so good. So I want to be able to recreate those and also compare them to my mom's recipe when I go home. And then I was also able to try a couple new things. I never really had artichoke dip. I've had spinach and artichoke dip, but I never had it the way that she made it, so that was really interesting to try, and it was also very good. And then I also just got closer with both Dr. Tracy and my classmates, which I enjoyed because we're all very different majors, so it's nice kind of getting to know each other and learning about different fields and stuff like that. And then these are some of my pictures. So these are all the sauces that went into the big spaghetti. I think there were 15 cans that we put into it. And then there's a picture on the bottom of us making and mixing all the different spices into a bowl before making some of the dips. And then there's another picture of the sauteing onions and then just meal prepping some of the dips. And then in the middle is the artichoke dip before we put it into the oven and ate that.
So we really enjoyed this meal. We ended up staying with Dr. Tracy for, I want to say, roughly 4 hours at the church. And so we definitely marked off the better part of our afternoon. But it was definitely worth it just to be able to see a glimpse into her lives and compare it to ours and then enjoy a meal all together.